team of UN experts has concluded there are reasonable grounds to believe sexual violence, including rape, happened during Hamas's October the 7th attacks on Israel. The UN Special Envoy for Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, presented the findings today.
Found clear and convincing information that sexual violence, including rape, sexualized torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, has been committed against captives. And we also have reasonable grounds to believe that such violence may still be ongoing against those still held in captivity.
Hamas has rejected the accusations, but the UN team says a full investigation should be conducted. The Israeli permanent representative to the UN, Gilad Erdan, says not enough is being done to protect the female hostages.
The UN claims to care about women. Yet, as we speak, right now, Israeli women are being raped and abused by Hamas terrorists. Where is the UN's voice? Where is your voice?
Meanwhile, the head of the UN's main relief agency in Gaza has updated the General Assembly on allegations its staff were involved in the October the 7th attacks.
As far as I'm concerned, at the time I have received the allegation, I have not received any substantiated or information or evidence, but because of the gravity of the allegation, I have taken swift action.
It was originally alleged 12 staffers were involved, but Israel says that it has evidence that 450 employees of the relief agency were members of Hamas, but it didn't provide any evidence for the increased number. Australia and several other nations have been withholding millions of dollars in funding to UNRWA as a result of the allegations. The head of the relief agency says there's an active campaign of misinformation against it.
UNRWA is facing a deliberate and concerted campaign to undermine its operations and ultimately end them. Operations that are mandated by this Assembly. Part of this campaign involves inundating donors with misinformation designed to foster distrust and tarnish the reputation of the agency. More blatant is the Israeli Prime Minister openly stating that UNRWA will not be part of post-war Gaza.
Former Middle East correspondent Nicole Johnston has more on Israel's claims.
Well, it's a big increase. About a month ago, Israel came out and said there were about a dozen UNRWA staff members they believed were members of Hamas or had been involved in the October 7 attack. That caused a big sort of shock inside UNRWA and effectively led to both Australia, the United States and a number of other countries withdrawing their funding from the agency at such a critical time. Now we have these allegations from Israel that the number could be 450 people. So that will really be sort of creating a lot of reverberations throughout that agency. UNRWA, for its part, has said that it welcomes an independent investigation into it. As you said, Israel hasn't provided the evidence yet. But it will be a shock to the agency and it will put them under a great deal of pressure at a time when you look at the Israeli narrative on the United Nations, it is under pressure. It's being criticised for not being fair and balanced. This is an Israeli criticism that's existed for a very long time. Both Israel and the UN are essentially at loggerheads at a time when they really do need to be working together.
And with Australia and other nations, several other nations, withholding millions of dollars in funding to UNRWA, what sort of operation are they able to conduct in Gaza?
From what we've seen and heard over the last couple of weeks, barely any operation is happening in Gaza, especially in the north. And that's because law and order in the Gaza Strip has completely broken down. There is a major security vacuum. There's no one there. Israel has pulled out of the north. Hamas has sort of melted underground. It's inside tunnels. It's not providing security. There's no policemen on the streets. So the United Nations and other aid agencies can't get aid into these areas, especially the north. And that's why we're now seeing these aid organisations talk about the sort of looming famine that 500,000 people are now in danger of.
Now to this, UN released reports saying that there are reasonable grounds to believe that sexual violence took place during Hamas's October the 7th attack. What do we know about that?
It's also talking about not only the October 7 attack, but also sexual violence against hostages inside Gaza that could be ongoing. Now, this report has come from the UN's Special Repertoire for Sexual Violence, and the language is important. It says, according to the report, clear and convincing information. It talks about credible circumstantial information of sexual violence, of degrading treatment, but we haven't had a great deal of information released about it at this stage, but it all adds to all of these concerns that we've heard over the last 5 months about what happened not only on October 7, but how those hostages are surviving inside Gaza at the moment.
Finally, Nicole, what's the latest on discussions regarding a temporary ceasefire?
Well, the talks moved from Paris to Qatar. They're now back in Cairo. Israeli officials are saying that they're not attending the talks, but that doesn't mean it's sort of game over. You know, we know that these back-channel talks continue even if they're not physically present. They're desperate to try and get some kind of agreement for a temporary 6-week truce in place by the start of Ramadan, the 10th of March. Why the Ramadan deadline? Because Israel said if there isn't an agreement in place by then, and if hostages aren't being released, it will carry out its land invasion of Rafah, that southern city where more than 1 million people are sheltering.